We get live right now, man. It's going down. Excited for the season. You know, we coming off a playoff win. I mean, you know, we had a couple wins.
Hello and welcome to episode 179 of Dear Diaries, a Milwaukee Bucks podcast presented by us, the wonderful people at Brewhoop. I am Kyle Carr. I have once again returned, so 2 episodes in a row. We're feeling great about it. Joining me as always is my good friend Riley Feldman. Riley, how's it going?
I'm doing well, Kyle. You're making as many consecutive appearances as Chris Middleton. We're on the... Or I guess not. No, Chris is still down to 1. So you've been more available than Chris has been. So credit to you for that. I'm well. My volleyball season came to an end last Monday. We lost in the semifinals, bravely lost in the semifinals. And I was able to suit up after wrapping up my toe, even though I was largely ineffective and probably more of an anchor on the team than anybody who was helpful to the final result. But, you know, kicking around. Got a little bit of snow around here, but otherwise hanging in.
Yeah, we got the snow and then it all melted, so I was not too upset with that. And joining us as always is my other good friend, Adam Paris. Adam, how's it going?
I'm doing great. I saw the pictures of snow and gotta say I didn't miss it, but I'm glad that it didn't stick around for long for both of you. So I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, it's one of those where I should have known there was going to be one more snowfall that happened. And granted, the further north you go in Wisconsin, the more they got and the worse it sounds. It's kind of nice being in Madison because it normally just melts right away. So one of the things that was melting and heating up are the Milwaukee Bucks against Western Conference opponents, apparently. So the last time we recorded, it was right before the Celtics game. Unfortunately, Milwaukee lost. They lost 119 to 122. They did not have Giannis Antetokounmpo in that game. He was held out with his injury concern as well. So still tough game, but Milwaukee almost was able to pull it out in the end. Just wasn't enough. Then they played on the next day, on Thursday, and were able to be victorious against the Brooklyn Nets, 115-108. Milwaukee had a sizable lead, almost blew it, but it's fine. They still won. And then yesterday, Sunday, we're recording this on Monday, which is a little weird, but we had seen Milwaukee dominate the Oklahoma City Thunder 118-93. That was a pretty healthy Bucks team, and it was weird. I think this was the first time we had all Chris, Giannis, and Dame in this game. I think they also were part of the Brooklyn game. It was a new beginning. It was exciting. We didn't know what to do with ourselves. Oh, I know. That was the first game that Chris, Giannis, and Dame all played. It's for the first time since the All-Star break. So, pretty good week overall. You know, 2 good wins and a close loss to Boston, which, I mean, is what it is once Giannis wasn't available. But, Riley, what did you take away from the previous week?
I don't want to steal Podfather, Frigman, and Steez for the 3-man rotation, pointing out that fact that the Giannis, Chris, Dame 3-man lineup, while not all that available compared to its contemporaries around the league, has been extremely efficient. I think they're plus 18 net rating on the year. In the 4 games they've appeared together since Doc Rivers took over at the end of January. That lineup, they played 92 minutes together. It's like 22 minutes a game, roughly. They have a plus 30 net rating. It's like a offensive rating of 125 or 126 and a defensive rating of 97. So it's, extremely effective 3. But that's not what I learned this week. What I learned was that if it comes down to the Bucks and the Celtics, which I don't want to jinx anything, but I'm feeling more and more confident as the weeks go by that it feels like the conference is a matchup of the top 2. If last Wednesday was a preview, a lot of that series is going to come down to the Bucks bigs, and in particular, Bobby Portis. And it feels like we've been talking about Bobby Portis. It's weird. We had a long stretch at the start of the season where it was like the only thing to talk about Bobby was the fact that he wanted to kill Adrian Griffin. Fair enough. Then we had a brief period where it was like, Bobby's playing really, really horribly. Let's trade him. Then he came over that. He demanded apologies. We gave him apologies. And now we're getting to the point where not everything to Milwaukee's title chances lies on Bobby Portis, but like a large amounts of our future lies on Bobby Portis in the playoffs, especially against the Celtics. The reason I say that is I'm not sure Brook Lopez is playable against the Celtics. He did not give me any reason to think he would be in really long stretches. I know Adam's cringing. I'm sorry, Adam, because especially we gave a shout out to Brook last week. I just wonder with the size, because the difference between the Celtics and the Thunder is not so much the top end size, but the fact that the Celtics throughout the entire lineup have above average size at every position. And so that's just really hard to deal with for a lot of teams, especially when you're forced to switch a lot, which the Celtics kind of make you do. And Brook's just not going to function well in that. There were so many straight line drives from the Jalen's in the Celtics series, partially because it's hard for our guards to guard up and stay attached to them around picks. Brook doesn't have it to like stay attached to them. They spread the floor with Porzingis or Al Horford. Like all the ingredients are there for Brook to struggle. So Doc did the right thing. He pulled Brook. Brook played like, I think the third fewest minutes of the 8 or 9 guys who played in that game. Notable. And then Bobby got a lot of run. Now Bobby almost lost the game. Well, we did lose, so you could argue that he did lose us the game in the first half. And then he was pretty much the sole reason we were in the game in the second half. So to me, if you're looking ahead to Bucks Celtics, assuming both teams make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, which feels, pretty likely at this point, knock on wood, it's going to come down to how well does Bobby hang in. If Bobby makes shots, if he can play the bully ball and make the Celtics pay when they run a couple of small guys out there, we're in the money. And if he can't, it will be tough to watch on a night-to-night basis. So to me, it's the substitute bigs. We could talk Jay Crowder if you like, but he had a decent-ish game against the Celtics. But to me, a lot of it rests on Bobby and that big man rotation in particular. So that's what I learned.
Yeah, Bobby played the second most minutes, along with Chris, like 33. Dame played 36. Bobby played 33. And I think it is one of those where the nice thing with the Bucks plan is with Brook Lopez, you kind of have to assume like if he's not going to be able to rim protect, which is kind of harder against the Celtics because they have bigs that are willing to shoot threes, that are willing to play more on the perimeter. Having Brook is helpful against a Joel Embiid. Having Brook is helpful against like the Nikola Vucevic's. Having Brook is probably going to be helpful against a team like Cleveland with like Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, just like guys that need to be more closer to the rim. And that's where Brook can thrive as the last line of defense and the rim protection. But when you get to Boston, when you start getting to maybe even Miami, we've seen that a few times, Indiana with Miles Turner, that's where it's going to start being like, okay, it might not be Brook's night. It might not be a game that we can have Brook. Hopefully then Bobby can do the job, which again, we don't know. Some games he will shoot you in and out of games. I think it's that simple. We've already acknowledged, Bobby's defense leaves a lot to be desired, but I do think Bobby's offense is going to be kind of like that X factor where if he's dialed in, Milwaukee can win these games pretty consistently. If he's not, then you're really hoping, okay, Giannis, okay, Dame, Chris, you three need to carry the offensive load like always, and hopefully Malik Beasley or Jay Crowder or Pat Bev or someone else is able to kind of hit the shots as well. So I do agree that it's kind of like I don't feel great about the big situation just because it is kind of reliant on Bobby making shots, and if he doesn't, then we're in big trouble. But it's kind of how the roster is constructed, and I mean, if Doc's going to be really committed to Giannis at 5 lineups, then he's going to have to figure out how to make it work.
Adam, am I being too reductive by saying that Brook Lopez can't play against the Celtics?
I'm not.
Or am I on a similar level in terms of basketball ball knowledge as Doc Rivers, who clearly acknowledged that Brook was not going to be able to hang on Wednesday against the Celtics?
I mean, you might know ball like Doc Rivers, but I don't want to spoil my 8-man rotation. But all I'll say is, I understand where you're both coming from. If people will recall during the run to the finals, yes, there were times where Brook didn't play, but if other people are looking back, if you actually remember, if you look at percentage of clutch time played, Brook actually played a larger percentage of clutch time than PJ Tucker. So I would also like to point that out there. I definitely think Brook Lopez will be playable. against the Boston Celtics, because there are going to be times where they have to have Al Horford and they're not going to care about that. I understand the strategic limitations of him trying to handle players driving inside and while also having Kristaps Porzingis spacing from the outside. But I do think some of the issues with that were Bucks are undersized on the perimeter, makes it really easy for both of the Jays to get straight line drives going. So it's really not hard there. And then I think Brooks in a hard situation. I can't remember if it was that game or not, but there was a game that Doc Rivers admittedly said, yeah, we made it really hard on Brook tonight. It's not necessarily his fault that the guys were just driving directly downhill. That being said, I do think if I was looking at what happened against the Thunder, I feel like I had a different perspective of not thinking about the Celtics, but looking at the Thunder game and just talking about the bigs overall. That was the first game I could remember in a long time where it felt like we kind of were on the run to the championship, where we actually utilized our size effectively. It was Brook inside. It was Bobby taking guys down low whenever he could, grabbing offensive boards. So in that regard, I was reminded a little bit of what we were doing on that run that I thought was so pivotal to getting extra possessions, really enforcing our will and looking like the big team that I think we were for quite a bit of that run.
I think two things. One, totally agree that Brook, it's the implication is not that Brook is completely unplayable and he's going to catch DNP CDs. Especially that Celtics game, I think he got subbed in very late in the game as well, again, to anchor defensive possessions, because Bobby got you most of the way there and then Brook can help close it out. So I think that is part of the formula. And two, while I acknowledge that the Bucks will just ignore Al Horford, I've just been hurt too many times. I think for me, it's just emotionally watching Al Horford, who needs to be checked regularly under the league's various performance enhancing drug regulations to see what the hell is. We need to shut things down and figure out what the hell is going on with Al Horford. I just worry a little bit about that, but I do agree. And to both the Celtics game and the Thunder game, most of the games that we've seen with Bobby, I think the complaint is somewhat, to me, like when I'm really frustrated, is when he hard charges up the floor, he gets to his spot on the elbow, we get the ball to him, and like it's maybe not the best matchup, and then he just burns the possession 3 seconds in with like an unnecessarily tough fadeaway jumper. Whereas you would much prefer, if you're going to run it through the offense through Bobby, which is viable, that you be deliberate about it. Like if he beats his guy all the way down the floor in the fast break, go for it. But otherwise, if they are able to halt it, get the ball out of Bobby's hands, kind of move things around a little bit, then go back to him. So hopefully that's more a function of coaching getting through to Bobby. But yeah, it'll be curious to see what that kind of balance is and how Doc strikes it. I think it's encouraging, even if it is sort of a blip, that Doc, within the course of the Celtics game, said, okay, we're going to just ride Bobby through here. He didn't, maybe you could say he got stuck a little bit on Bobby, but he wasn't stuck to like, we just got to force Brook because Brook is the guy out there. Like there was a little bit of strategic or tactical changes going on from Doc, which was encouraging to me. So.
Yeah, I think we just have to find a way for Al Horford to somehow be caught up in this whole gambling thing that everyone else in the world seems to be caught up in as well. I think that's the key.
Kyle is playing chess, not checkers. I'm over here trying to get him on steroids, and Kyle's like, what if we went prop bets? That's a way more effective.
What if we just went with the trendy thing that's happening in the sports world right now?
Yeah, good point.
All right, Adam, what about you? What did you learn in the last week?
I'm not. So I'm wondering. It's maybe more of an open question. So I'm curious what we can all take away from this. But I do feel like there's always this push and pull with the regular season, right? Where if we're the Bucks, who are the number 1 seed and doing well, and it's March, and we give away a game by like 15, 20 points, it's like, well, it's March. It doesn't really matter. These are games that aren't really that important. And then we see this game where they beat the Thunder and we're like, well, we're obviously winning the championship, right? Like this is clearly a game that matters. Now, I do think this season is a different one, right? Like I think it's a very different situation because of the weird coaching situation, because of the fact that we haven't really seen this Bucks team click into gear, and this was probably, frankly, the most complete win of the season. And so I do not blame people. I mean, I was excited about it too. It's so much more fun when the Bucks look that good and look dominant. But I did just sort of for a second there, try to kind of catch myself and be like, well, trying to suss out what's real, what's not real. Obviously, the Thunder didn't shoot that well this year versus not. But I don't know. What do you think, Riley? How do you kind of balance those two things, especially in this weird year for the Bucks?
I am probably easily the most reactionary member of the podcast, although Kyle can also give me a run for my money if we're in the right mood, if he and I are feeding off one another. So, of course, yes, when you have your group of we beat the Thunder, and that makes us spiritually both the Western Conference champions and the overall NBA champions to be, like, I'm right there. I'm right there for you. I think what the difference is, though, is what you said with the coaching staff. And if I go back to years past with Bud, like, even if we weren't the number one overall seed, the whole team was built on the system. So I couldn't get excited about whatever. And also, I knew what was coming down the pike. I knew it was going to be trench warfare, just hard to watch basketball. I was going to want to kill everybody on the team. I knew what was waiting for me. They pre-wrote for me the script. And so if in the course of that script, you lose a couple of games in March because you're kind of cruising, you don't really care, the system's there, Bud isn't really like actively coaching during the games, just kind of like, we'll just see how it goes. And then if it gets tight, maybe I'll intervene or whatever. With this, it's just, I think you would also think it's different too if we were in the same. Let's say Bud was still here. Let's equalize the coaching situation. Bud is still here, but we've had the same injury problems. I think we would also attribute more meaning to these games simply because, like I said, we've seen Dame, Giannis, and Chris take the floor in 4 games in 2 months. Like that's, and in 2 months with the brand new coaching staff. So anytime they even take the floor is a moral victory. And then if they go ahead and win and it's against a good opponent, that's like, it's an uber victory is the way I look at that. So there is a risk at over indexing it and thinking this is indicative of we're really about to rip this league in half. But I don't think people are wrong to read a little bit more into this season than they would have in previous years, just because the circumstances are so different.
Yeah, I kind of tie it into my what I learned, and what I learned is I feel better about this team playoffs chances because not necessarily because like, oh yeah, signature March wins mean anything, but I think it's just the manner of how they won some of these games where it's like, okay, the Thunder, that's a team that on paper would look like a team that should give Milwaukee problems. They're young, they're athletic, they have all these guys that can do all these things. They have a guard that can pretty much score at 3 levels. So I would think, okay, that's going to be a little bit difficult for the Bucks. And they pretty much manhandled them. They used their size to their advantage. They pretty much made Shea have one of his worst games of the season. Chet Holmgren could not do anything. I mean, Josh Giddey was their leading scorer. Maybe he should also be in a certain location that, but it is what it is. But, it's just like some of these kind of wins where even against Boston, yes, they were down pretty big early, but they were able to like make the late charge. But it's still encouraging to see. You see them against Phoenix, get the win against them. They're able to win gritty against the Sixers, against the Clippers both times. So it is encouraging to see some of these games. Now, would it have been nice for them to beat the Lakers? Yes. Would have been nice if when they're out in California to get more than one win? Sure. But I think it's one of those, they seems to be a team that is actually starting to figure it out. And defensively has been the biggest improvement, I would say, other than, the games that they're, besides the 3 games they're in California and even the Suns game, Milwaukee has done a pretty good job. And I think that's where I feel encouraged. So I do think they mean something. And like Riley said, having Chris, Giannis, and Dame actually play is a moral victory. But I think it is a matter of like where Milwaukee is at in terms of how they're playing. It seems like this is, even though the record might not fully show it, this seems like this is the best basketball they've been playing this month.
A couple of other reasons to be excited about the end of season March wins. I think one, if you look at the standings, victories now, we're not going to catch the Celtics, but you get a little bit of breathing room against the Cavs, and we've had guys who are all beat up. So if you can buy yourself a game or two to give guys a little bit more rest where you're not fighting to stay out of the 3rd seed, I think that's a great thing. That's something to be kind of happy about, even if it doesn't really mean anything for the long-term playoff chances. The other thing too is the reps, especially for the defense. I think are super important. I thought it was interesting. Shout out to Jackson, our colleague at Brew Hoop. He asked Doc at the end of his presser after the Thunder post game, just talking about the turnaround in the defense. And Doc went on and talking about how essentially like they simplify the way that things are being read on the courts. Like if you don't have to think, then you act faster or something was like Doc's maxim. And he was like, and it, you know, in some games, Chris will like raise his hand during a timeout and be like, I don't know what we're doing on defense, which is concerning, but also I guess not surprising given the little inklings we've had about what the rest of the season was. So the fact that the defense is not world beating. I don't think anybody is under the it was against the Thunder, but nobody's under the impression that all of a sudden we've turned into like the top defense in the league, but reps there, especially, and then also the reps with the a little bit more of a structured offense. So I think there's reason to feel better about the playoff chances, even if they lose to the Celtics. Let's be honest, bringing it close at the end was sort of a fluke based off of the fact that Bobby went unconscious for a quarter and a half. They should have lost that by a ton. They were losing it by a ton. So I don't even really look at that as a moral victory per se, but the trend in general, we're like 3 games above 500 with Doc. 3 games. We were like at 500 or below that for forever. And now we're starting to climb just a little bit out of the ooze, just a little bit. So, you know, that's just more reasons why to be encouraged, even if I'm not going to declare us as the shoe-in, you know, jokes aside about the Thunder game. I'm not going to declare us shoe-in title contenders, but we look a lot more competent than we did even a couple of weeks ago.
Awesome. Yeah. Anything else in terms of what we learned? Or
I got 3 questions for you guys if we have time for it. Okay.
Go for it.
Another funny thing that we got out of recent press availability from the Bucks, and this was on Jamal Collier's article on ESPN. I would recommend people go read it. It's about the Dame Giannis pick and roll. And there was an anecdote in there where Doc's first full practice as head coach, he forced Giannis and Dame to run a 3v2 exercise of they just did pick. So it was like those two versus the other starters. And they just did pick and roll after pick and roll after pick and roll after pick and roll. And they started, the defense is even on them. They say, okay, Giannis, you go here. Now give the ball to Dame. Dame, you go here. Like they just did that for like 15, 20 seconds. And then Dame was like, and we all just laughed because it was absurd, which seems to imply, again, we spent almost an entire NBA season without ever having practiced Dame and Giannis pick and rolls as a team. Concerning. But here's my question for you guys, because I think, no, they weren't practicing it with Giannis. Going back to the Bud years, do you think they ever practice Giannis Jrue pick and roll drills like that? Do you think they ever practice Giannis Bledsoe pick and roll drills? Do you think they practice Giannis Chris pick and roll drills? I ask because it just seemed like the chemistry was really off between Dame and Giannis, and that Giannis didn't really know how to function with the true pick and roll. Do you think this is something Giannis has ever been asked to really practice with somebody in a very deliberate way before? Or is this like a first time experience for him?
I will say with Jrue, no, that never happened. With Chris, yes, because all those lobs, you have to have practiced that at some point.
Shout out Jason Kidd, unfortunately.
Yeah. With Bledsoe, I would say maybe, but we're also talking about Eric Bledsoe and still figuring things out, Giannis, so it's like, maybe they practice it, but how much was retained from that practice? We got to figure that out, especially in the playoffs. I think in the playoffs, they just kind of forgot how to play basketball. So Jrue, no. Chris, yes. Bledsoe, I will say yes, they didn't practice it. It just didn't work.
Adam?
I think that's the correct answer. I think the one thing that Giannis still needs to work on is they clearly haven't practiced much of him catching the ball on the move. It seems like if he gets the ball in the pick and roll, it either has to be an insane dunk that no one else in the league can do, or that might be about it, because he's still working on it. He's looked better, I will say, of late in terms of getting the ball from Dame with a double Dame. He gets it. He's making decisions quickly, but he's definitely looks improved at that. But I definitely don't think he was running that stuff with Jrue. And if you look at the numbers, the Bucks were almost always like the bottom 5 in terms of percentage of pick and roll play with Bud. So they definitely weren't drilling it that much. But great call, Kyle, on the Chris Giannis.
And unfortunately, yes, I think that probably has its root back in the Jason Kidd days. So that hurts me to say that, but he who shall not be named just got named. Okay, second question. Any any fresh Doc takes? Evaluation feeling good, feeling neutral, feeling bad? Is he doing things that you like? Is he doing things that you don't like? Where are we with Doc now, 25 games in?
I am still neutral, but I'm not. I'm not completely out. I'm not all in, but I feel more optimistic than I did when he first got hired.
Okay. Wow, ringing. I'll say I am really pleased. I think looking at what's been happening, and some of it could be his assistants, right? Like Marcus made this offhanded comment that I thought was kind of interesting on the broadcast against OKC, where he said he thought Rex Kalamian's defense was not for the faint of intelligence or something like that. Clearly indicating that there was some level of complexity to it that he thought was interesting enough. And I thought that's a kind of a little interesting kernel. And I also think Doc needed to be the one to tell Giannis and Dame, you guys are idiots, just run a pick and roll over and over. And I think there aren't that many coaches that would have been able to do. Like I think about what Bud's delivery of that might be, and I think there's more structure than there ever was under Bud with what they're running on the floor, which I appreciate. I don't enjoy his rotations quite as much, and I think that will get the Bucks into trouble. But I do think tactically and in terms of having the team actually looking like a competent team out there, he's done a really good job and has been a good voice for this particular group of all-stars.
I was going to say the biggest thing I want to give credit to Doc and his staff is we moved away from the freestyle, my turn, your turn of years before, which worked to a certain extent, but obviously crapped on us in the playoffs. And now we have a lot more structure of the first action is the Giannis Dave move. Then you have Chris in the, in the mix is the third option. And then it's still my turn, your turn, but it's much more deliberate and thought out of whose turn is going to be and how exactly we're going to get there. It's not going to be this possession is Giannis's turn. Let's see what he does. And then we're going to react off of that. There's probably a little bit more in the way of pre-thought to it. So I think that's a big up and is going to be super helpful for a team that, a lot of the guys, there's still guys in the playoff rotation, as we're going to do in our 8-man rotation a little bit, who are holdovers from the Bud era, who are used to just that freestyle. Exhibit A, Bobby Portis, when he jacks up a shot 3 seconds in the shot clock. Something more structured will be good. And I also want to give a shout out to Doc for I think he enjoys using the press. I think he enjoys using press conferences to send messages, communicate. I've watched more Doc post-game pressers in his 25 games than I did in Bud's 4 or 5 seasons here. So he's a lot more entertaining to listen to. That doesn't necessarily reflect anything on Bud, but obviously listening to a Bud press conference was like watching paint dry. So entertaining on the court and off of it. And yes, I think he's for John Horst to get cachet coach to get these guys to buy in and finally have a structure. Seems like it was as good of a hire as you could get. So shout out to Doc. Third question. Sorry that these aren't really rapid fire, so I guess good thing we're leaving it to Adam. So related to Doc, related to the pick and roll, we've seen a transformation to me in the way that Giannis has approached the game offensively. I wrote an article last week kind of lauding the season that Giannis has had. He's been great. He's been the anchor every single night when he's available. He's had an awesome season. But what's interesting to me is he seems to be picking up how to work in the pick and roll relatively quickly. Like that 2-man game and the way that they close games seems like a fucking menace to have to deal with as a defense. Like just the way those two, him and Dame, play on the wing above the break, out on the perimeter is awesome. And I wonder, or my question, I guess, would be, do you think we're starting to see a real transformation into Giannis's transformation into the next step and into his career beyond here, where it is start on the perimeter, but it seems like a lot of it is much more focused inside the 3-point line than it ever has been before. And I think that's a good thing, both because it'll preserve his body, and 2, we're getting evidence that he can maintain like really, really great production, even with a less explosive way of playing. So I'm just curious if you guys think, is what we're seeing of Giannis this season, a little bit of an outlier? Like, yes, he's taking a step forward, but it's mostly because of Dame is there. Or do you think this is more of like a solid transition to like the kind of player offensively he'll be next season, year beyond, and into his 30s and things like that?
I think it will, just because instead of needing, because I think like one of the things with like younger Giannis was not only did he have the speed and strength, but he also had like that additional flexibility where he was able to contort his body more. But it was also more out of control, which led to a lot of the charges, led to a lot of like the reckless turnovers. So I think that was part of it. And now that he's getting older, he still has the speed, he still has the strength. He doesn't need to contort his body. It seems like he's more comfortable with his body, because we also have to remember he was still growing into it in that time as well. So I think now that he's kind of like, this is his body, and it's kind of going to stay this way, and it's going to be more consistent, I think he's figuring that out. And I think not having as much of an offensive burden as he's had in the past will allow him to kind of, so I think this is the start of it. I don't know if it'll be this uber efficient. I think this is definitely like the most efficient he'll probably be, and that's okay. I still think it is definitely I think it's more of a sign of like what we expect to see from him moving forward, because he's also not taking dumb threes as frequently.
Yeah, I would say that's been welcome. I think that's probably true. I think I have some questions about whether he'll be able to like Kyle said, maintain this level of efficiency, especially as an isolation scorer. I think there's a world where you unlock him as hopefully this doesn't offend anyone, but like a really, really good Draymond Green as a pick and roll partner with Dame. And I think there's some ways to unlock him even more that way. And I think he'd be a way better finisher than Draymond would be. Could be just as good of a passer defensively. I think there's still, that kind of stuff. He could be working on his short push shots. I think he's gotten better at that. So I do think it's sort of a step forward for him. And I think he's played more within himself, like you said. And I think hopefully he'll be able to kind of maintain this trajectory. I wouldn't say there's anything that feels too outliery about it so far.
I would tend to agree. And I think the other upside to that is, so when you think of, okay, here's how is Giannis going to age? He uses so much athleticism. I think it's very encouraging that he's, yes, still very athletic. He's using all his physical gifts, but he's starting to finally really combine the decade plus of experience he has with what he's able to do. The other upside, if you're John Horst, if you're the Bucks, the emergence of Giannis as like an actual pick and roll guy, or even just somebody you can play the 2-man game with, that seriously extends Damian Lillard's time horizon to be an effective player, I think, because he was, I think the idea early in the season that we've really started to see like the serious decline in Dame, I discount a lot of that because of the off the court stuff. But, he's also in his 30s. He'll be getting older here. There's a reason why you look at that final contract or final year on the contract. Yeah, that's a lot of money for a guy who will be his age. But if he and Giannis are able to unlock like a really effective, and it's not even when you watch it, like they're physically dominating, like Dame is really blowing by guys. Like it's just that really quick first step and a half-hearted pick by Giannis. If those two can figure it out, that extends both their timelines competitively as an offensive duo extensively. So yet again, Giannis expanding and transforming his game lifts the rest of the team around him. So credit to him. He's an awesome player. He's an awesome guy. And this was yet another signature season and a crowning achievement. Hopefully we have the postseason success to go with it. But just wanted to get you guys' temperature on some of the wider stuff around the team. That's all the questions I had.
All right. Yeah, that kind of transitions. We'll call that Fuck the Host Part 1.
There we go.
But the more important part, it's back, people. We thought it was done. We thought it was over. We thought Doc Rivers had put to bed any indication, but we will not go silently in the night. We are going to do an 8-man rotation right now, and that's what we're going to do. You know how we do it. We pick 8 players. It's a game 7 against Boston. We got to pick 8. Who are we picking? So, Adam, I'm letting you go first.
Okay, real quickly. It just as a clarifying, it's who we would have, or is it who we think Doc will have, right? It's who we have, right?
Who we want.
Okay.
We are the coach. We have gotten rid of Doc Rivers. We are the coach.
Kyle's rejoicing.
Yeah.
Got rid of Doc Rivers, and now Kyle is the coach in his place.
Okay, so Giannis, Dame, Chris Brook, we'll all have those 4. Although maybe not Riley.
Such a huge Brook hater.
Brooks going to ask you to apologize, Riley, when he has like a 30-point game.
Add it to the list. I got a lot of apologies to make to a lot of players. I'm sorry.
Okay, and then Pat Connaughton.
We're still doing this, huh?
Yeah, I have him above Malik. Malik, Jay Crowder, and Pat Beverly.
So no Bobby.
No Bobby.
I have no Bobby.
Ooh.
What's give me the logic. Give us the breakdown, the J over Bobby pick.
This is my logic. I think against Boston, when you're at game 7, you will have realized that over that large of a sample size, Bobby is not as playable in the crutch moments. And theoretically, if it's game 7 against Boston, you'll have gone through the playoffs and discovered how to make a Giannis at center lineup work. So I'm picturing like Dame, Chris, Giannis, probably Pat. Honestly, either Pat Connaughton or Pat Beverly. I could see if you need to muck it up, and then find some way to get Jay Crowder on the court as another slightly bigger body at the power forward position. So who knows? I think I'm probably incorrect. I do not think that's what's probably going to happen, but I think it was great for Bobby to go on that run, but I still have a lot of questions about how the team will be able to function with him defensively, because I think Boston can be really, really good offensively. And I think you might have to muck it up a little defensively with them. So, and I think you'll have enough scoring punch with Chris back. So, and the core 3 in there playing lots of minutes. So that's my rationale behind it.
All right.
I think, yeah, no, I think it's super valid. So I'll just do my 8 real quick. I call this the Riley and Doc no ball lineup because I have a feeling it's the exact same lineup that Doc will run out there. So yes, Dame, Chris, Giannis, Brook. I did include it. Broke my heart, but I did include Brook. I will give him the start. Malik will make the cut. Malik is, easily the one that could see his spot fall real quick if it's not falling, but so far he's maintained the starting spot, so I'm gonna give it to him. The Pats, and then Bobby. So Jay is my guy who's sitting, but I could easily be swayed the other direction. I just think Bobby is mostly a wreck on defense, but he's not like a total loser all the time. He's just a loser a lot of the time. So I guess my bet is you're just going to supercharge the offense, and if you win those Bobby minutes off of his shooting, then you're in awesome position. I mean, you're almost in a lock to win, but it really depends on what kind of Bobby you get at the end of the season. So I could easily see Bobby fall for Jay and Malik fall for one of the Pats or whatever. Sorry, Kyle. AJ Green's not going to make the cut, and against it all, Pat Connaughton, he's reemerged. I was deeply impressed with how he played in the fourth quarter of the Celtics game in particular. He did all the Pat stuff. He got like a late game chaos ball steal with the game on the line. I was like, that's the Pat Connaughton I remember begrudgingly rooting for all those seasons. So I think Pat's back, and I think Pat Bev is like a good muck up guy. I think his defense seems a little bit more rodeo-ish than I was expecting it to be at this point. But, I think you want to stack those guards. I'm not too worried. You can run a lot of Giannis big lineups. So, Pat's, Bobby off the bench, and then the usual starters.
Yeah, Sterling is over here gleeful about the Pat situation. He is in full agreement.
Yeah.
I'm not. All right.
Ajax, This is your moment. Let's go.
So we got Brooke, Chris, Giannis, Dame. Got that. I'm keeping Malik Beasley in. I think even though it's not the most ideal defense, he still puts in effort. He still can get some good deflections. His shooting is still good enough that I can't leave him on the bench. I am going to put Bobby in, and my biggest reason is if I have one game and I have a game on the line, Bobby seems to be the guy that seems to want to step up when the game is needed. So I'm going to put Bobby in there. I had some hesitation at first, but I'm only at 5. Oh, no, I'm at 6. Okay. Congratulations, Jay Crowder. You have made it. You have made it. Bags will be packed. I will be ready to send him to an airport, but you will get one last chance to prove yourself. I think his defense has been phenomenal. I think defensively against a Boston, you're going to need that. And I can't, even though personal feelings aside, I have to recognize he's been phenomenal on defense. So I will give Jay Crowder. I don't have AJ Green. He was very close, but I got Pat Bev. Because you're still going to need some guard size to deal with Jrue Holiday, to deal with Derek White. You're going to need someone that can do it. And that's where Pat Bev's going to come in. So I guess like other than Bobby, I'm kind of just looking at the fringe players of like, okay, I need defense, or at least I need effort on defense. So that is who I got. AJ Green would have been 9 if I could go more, but I think it's just one of those where I know I'm going to need a little bit more defensive oomph on the wing. And even though AJ Green's solid, but I think I just need more. And that's why that's why I got FJ, because Jay's been great and I'm going to need it.
I think the thing about Jay is he's the most easily interoperable player in the rotation. He's the easiest one to plug and play with the starters if you want a completely different look from Brook. So, I completely get that. I think he's not a complete zero on offense, but unless he's taking threes, you really don't want to take a shot. So he's essentially morphing into like less athletic PJ Tucker in terms of like side to side agility. The only thing I would want from Jay is if he's going to make my playoff rotation, and this kind of ties back into thing I learned or about the Celtics game. The way we're going to win a game against the Celtics is we have to be willing to just be like total assholes every single game during the entire series. We are not going to out finesse them. That is just not going to happen. Like there's just no universe in which that happens. So Jay needs to be willing to essentially rack up pseudo flagrants, all 6 fouls. Pat Bev has to do the same thing. Bobby will do it without like being an effective fouler, and then he'll get called for a T for being like riling himself up. Malik won't do that, but like I just need guys to really be physical. And the concerning part in the Celtics game was the number of times that Peyton Pritchard beat Brook Lopez for rebounds. Kind of a concerning thing, but I think hopefully mostly because just Brook didn't really care. But Jay, if you want to just beat the Celtics by being the uglier team, Jay is going to be so critical to that. So I completely defensible putting him in the lineup for that. I agree.
I see nothing wrong with that, because when you get to the playoffs, you're going to just have to be more physical than the other team. You're just going to have to be tougher. And that can throw a player like Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown off the rhythm. I'm not condoning a hard foul. I'm just saying, maybe just a little bit more forearm involved.
Can I ask one thing? Because I don't think we're talking about it much, and I think we've just kind of assumed it now. And you alluded to it, Riley. So, for example, Malik Beasley was a Los Angeles Laker last year. I'm looking at Game 1 against the Denver Nuggets in the Western Conference Finals.
You want to have this discussion right now? Okay, go for it. Yeah.
I think it's worth discussing because we're a few weeks out, and I had him in my rotation, so I'm saying I believe in him. The Lakers ran out Austin Reeves, Anthony Davis, LeBron James, Dennis Schroeder, D'Angelo Russell, Rui Hachimura, Lonnie Walker, and Jared Vanderbilt. That was their 8-man rotation. So Beasley did not beat out Lonnie Walker, D'Angelo Russell, or Dennis Schroeder. I guess maybe you could throw Rui in there. Jared Vanderbilt's like too big. And he basically didn't play for the last 2 rounds of the playoffs. Any chance we get that scenario again this time where his shot just completely abandons him? Okay, Riley, you're nodding. So I feel like it's hard for me to imagine that because he's been the starter the whole year, and I don't know. I'm having trouble imagining a scenario where he totally falls out.
I want Kyle to go. I'll let Kyle go first because I want to go look up Malik's shooting splits by month because I think he's been on the downside. But you go, Kyle. I just want to look at the numbers real quick.
Well, one, that just sounds like incompetence from the Lakers side, to be honest. So like, I can't hold that against Malik Beasley.
Yeah.
2, I think Malik is not shooting as well as before, but I think the biggest thing, he's been a starter both with Griffin and Doc. So like, if there is a time for him to start falling out of the rotation,
that's right,
it would have happened by now. I do think he is kind of the guy that's like, even like I mentioned, he's going to put in that effort, and he is someone that can make the big play. it kind of feels like, yes, he has his flaws in terms of getting around screens, but in terms of just being in the passing lanes when he's not being screened, I think he does a good job. The problem is if you do a pick and roll where Dame and him, where it involves Dame and him, then he's in trouble. So I think that's kind of the biggest reason. And I also think, like, who are you gonna, like, that means, okay, so that means you're gonna give Pat Connaughton more of those minutes. Are you gonna give those minutes to AJ Green? Are you gonna give those minutes to, like, it's kind of hard to see that scenario where it's kind of like the only two players that could potentially take more of those minutes would be Pat Connaughton and AJ Green, and we're just gonna assume Pat Connaughton is gonna play anyway.
So I pulled up the numbers real quick. So just run through it real quick. Month to month is 3-point percentage. So October, 3 games, 35%. November, 45.7%. December, 51.5%. We say John Horst did it again. He's John Heist. January hits 40.7%. Okay, Malik is also trying to get Griffin fired. February, 46.5%. March, in 10 games, on 7.6 3-point attempts a game, he's shooting 31.6%. I think it's very viable. We've been talking for months and months that Malik is the Bryn Forbes stand-in for this team. The second the shot goes away, now it's a little different because he's much bigger than Bryn Forbes. Bryn Forbes is like an actual zero on defense. Malik tries and he has size, so you can at least think of it working. But I think he, of all the starters, and pretty much anybody in my, my rotation, your guys' rotation, easily the guy that gets dropped the quickest if the shots aren't falling. Because I think Pat Connaughton is the guy. Like he will get deputized to be the fifth starter if that's what it takes. Like they have the replacement. That's the thing. That's the tough part about Malik. Like he doesn't bring enough on defense on his own. Pat has been better. He also didn't really do much on defense for a long time, but Pat is more of the glue guy. Malik isn't really a glue guy. Malik is if he's really hot and he can shoot you through a game. Otherwise, you're really kind of hoping to hide him. So I think he's easily the guy that gets dropped the quickest. I'm keeping him in there because you want to see, kind of like Bobby, if he's really hot from 3, then you're cooking with gas, but most tenuous grasp on the play. And as much as I love clowning on the Lakers, it's a national pastime. I agree with Kyle. I don't think this is like, I think Malik has also struggled to break through. Also, I don't know how many playoff runs has he even had. I'd have to even go look, but I don't think it's a fluke that he got dropped the way that he did. I don't look at those and say, coach just didn't trust him. I think Darvin Ham is like a decent coach. I don't think that was completely a fluke, especially when he lost his job to some of the NBA players of all time. Like when the sun blows up, we're all incinerated, the earth goes away, it's all over. We're going to look back and say, you remember, there's just a bunch of, remember those guys? So not good for Malik. That is my take on it. And he does not help that he's not been shooting great from 3 this month either. He'll turn it around.
But it's fine. It's fine. Good question though, Adam. That valid question to ask. Good question to ask. Maybe that'll be something we monitor. We'll do this 8-man rotation exercise right going into the playoffs. So that is it for Buck the Host. We are now at our favorite, the miscellaneous topic. So Adam has the rapid fire this week. So go ahead, Adam.
Okay, this was the first one, kicking it off. Will DJ Wilson get a second 10-day with the Philadelphia 76ers?
Kyle's face. Kyle can't even find the words. That's I'm gonna say yeah. Kyle's stunned into silence. Yes, he will. Yeah, I believe in DJ. He seems, he's a little insane, but he seems like a good guy. He has the tools. He's always had the physical tools. He just didn't know how to apply them on a basketball court, which, given John Horst's draft history, is something that's very common amongst John Horst draft picks besides Dante. So, I think he'll find a second 10-day. Whether he has anything beyond that, probably not.
Yeah, he'll get it because it's the Sixers and they're an unserious franchise.
Yeah. Actually, you know what though? Here's the thing though. Daryl Morey, he loves signing really deep bench guys to like 10-year deals with every year's like a team option. So don't be surprised if DJ Wilson a week and a half from now is signing a 5-year deal with the Sixers where all 4 of the final years are non-guaranteed for like $2.
Unserious franchise.
We'll always have that one defensive possession. Okay, next question.
That Heat game, yeah.
What was your least favorite chore as a kid?
As a kid, I would say doing the dishes because we did not have a dishwasher, so I had to do it by hand.
My brother and I and my mom, we still joke about it amongst ourselves. We hated doing the mulch around the house. Like every time I see my mom or I see my brother, I'm like, oh, hope mom doesn't have some mulching for us to do because it took forever and we absolutely messed it up every single time. And it's not like my parents were strict perfectionists or anything, but they were on us about the mulching. I'll tell you what. So, and we had like big berms and stuff. So we had to do a lot of mulching. So I hated mulching as a chore.
Okay. I raked leaves for the first time as basically ever as an adult recently and bagged those up. Honestly, that was worse than any chore I did as a kid. And I grew up on a farm. That was awful. I don't know how people do this. What a terrible thing.
See, that's the thing. You don't rake it. You just mow over it and let it mulch over the winter and just give up on it.
The problem was I was all on the give up, and then for Valentine's Day I went out and raked some leaves, and then from then on I was over because I still had I've had to do 12 rounds since then to finish up in my freaking yard.
Did you at least rake the leaves into a heart or something?
No,
it just happened to be on Valentine's Day.
I did it because I do thing I cook and I clean, so this was the example of me doing something that I would be out of my normal.
Did you almost say if that was beneath me? Is that what you?
No, not beneath me. In my current living situation, my wife is she's knows how to do actual things, fix things, and I don't know, actual street smart things, and I'm like, I can cook a chicken. So that's about all I have to offer her. So that's why I was trying to do that, and my body was convulsing with pain. So that was a bad sign. Okay.
Shout out to Mr. Paris who's listening and is shaking his head.
Oh yeah, he's really disappointed. Okay, crunch time, game 7 against Boston. Bucks are down by 1. It's a 1 possession game. Are you dialing up the Dame Giannis pick and roll or the Chris Giannis pick and roll?
Do the Chris Giannis pick and roll because that we have seen it work so many times. Oh wait, actually, no. Nope. I'm changing Dame Giannis because I just realized teams are actually going to pressure Chris and he's going to dribble the ball off someone's foot.
I say, if these MFers got us here, let's ride it all the way into the ground. If we somehow have to go to game 7 and the game is that close, let's let the old war horses get it done. And I know inevitably it would turn into spiral, especially if they messed it up, it would spiral into a Dame hates his teammates. He can't wait to go to Miami. The downside is so great that the sane answer is to say Dame Giannis, but I'm a romantic at heart. Let's see Chris and Giannis get us over the line.
Okay, that's beautiful. Okay, it's when you did the school photos as a kid, your school photograph, it was always the same company. Would you normally go for the standard gray backdrop or ask your parents to get and pay a little extra for the green or the purple background color? Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Okay.
There was no asking for the extra money for the backdrops. I swear to God, and I love my parents, but I don't think they ever looked at a single one of my yearbooks as in all 12 or whatever years of my going to school. I don't think they ever looked at my yearbooks. Fair enough. So no, we did not pay for that.
Yeah, I feel like there was 1 year that I went with a blue background instead of gray. I think that was my sophomore, junior year, and that was it. Otherwise, we were just a gray background. Not because they didn't want to pay the money. They just were like, why? They're just thinking this is unnecessary.
I think I did green 1 year. I have a distinct picture of me with a green background. I think wearing a white tiger t-shirt that I got in Minocqua. That is peak sad Wisconsin.
The only thing sadder would have been wearing your Andrew Bogut or Michael Redd jersey to the picture.
I didn't get to pick what I got to wear in my school photo. My clothes were picked for me to wear for that school photo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It was always some ridiculous polo I got from American Eagle or Aeropostale.
Okay. You're part of you're joining the Bucks game ops crew, and you have to work all the home games. Are you going to be a ball boy or a member of the Rim Rockers?
I don't want to die. I'm going to be a ball boy. I'm good. I'm good. Plus, everybody says that ball boys get massive tips from NBA players, so I'm willing to break off some of that NBA player bread and pass them balls. I will be a ball boy.
I'll go rim rocker because I only have to do like 45 seconds of actual work.
Okay, is Kyle looking down upon rim rockers?
No, I'm just saying, like, if you're gonna make me work, I'm only gonna do the one that requires like 45 seconds to a minute.
Yeah.
I'm sprinting down the court and I get to dunk a basketball. I'll do that.
Yeah.
Oh God. Okay. Last question. You are both pro basketball players, but you need a little extra cash. Who are you trusting in your life to place those bets on your prop bets on your behalf?
Man, I shouldn't say this. It's not that my brother is a problem gambler, but he has contemplated becoming a member of whatever the loyalty club at Potawatomi is, because he frequents the sports book there. So I don't know all about gambling. He seems to know a little bit, and it would be extremely obvious and extremely easy for federal authorities to find it out and prosecute me. But I'll choose my brother. I'll ride or die with you, Jacob. You're going to be my bookie.
I am also gonna go with my brother because earlier in the night, we were talking to my parents and my brother, and he had some parlay of like over-unders a lot in almost every women's college basketball tournament game going on. Okay. Like it was obscene what he had. And I'm just sitting there like, all right, I'm not judging, but we are taking it. It was like a 5-player parlay. I was just like, this is obscene. This is ridiculous. And if there's anyone that's going to do it, I would trust him the most because also if he screws up, he knows I will bail him out with massive small print details in addition. So Kalen, I'm trusting you because you know how to make the bets at Pato and I don't.
It's very, very ironic that both Kyle and I, our younger brothers, are fiends for the parlay. My brother will send me his stupid receipt from Pato, and it's like it's like he went grocery shopping, all for one bet. I'm like, don't show me this. I can't. What am I supposed to tell mom? I can't. Don't send me these pictures. So, shout out. It's awesome. How about you, Adam? Who's placing your bets for you? Is it going to be Shohei Ohtani's translator, since apparently he knows what he's doing? Or
I don't think so. I also have a younger brother. Shout out Dylan, but he wouldn't be my pick. I have a friend named Quinn who bets on so many different sports.
This is friend of the podcast, Quinn.
Yes.
Quinn is he's the spiritual fourth podcast host. Shout out to Quinn.
Yes, yeah. So like every time I go to his house, he's like, "Yeah, I just got into this Barcelona soccer league, and I've been making buku bucks on it." So not only do I trust him to do a good job of gambling and make money, but his father's a lawyer, his uncle is like a judge, so I feel like he's got some strings to be able to pull me, get me out if we get into any hot water. So shout out Quinn, he's who I'd pick to put the bets on me as I'm playing.
All right.
That's special.
And also,
that's a special relationship.
Disclaimer: we're not saying Shohei Ohtani is placing these bets.
Yeah. Sorry.
All right. I don't want his people to sue me because he's got that much money they can hire the best lawyers in the world. We're not saying that. We're just
that'd be a cool way to plug Dear Diaries, though. If we become the first Bucks podcast sued by Shohei Ohtani, I'd put that in the podcast.
What's one more lawyer in my life, honestly? What's one more lawyer in my life? All right.
Moving along.
Is that it, Adam? Or
yes, that's it. Yeah.
Okay. I'll go
Good
into
questions.
the film review. Someone's gonna hear this and be like, "What did Kyle just say?" I am concerned for him. Anyways, yeah, I watched Neighbors on Saturday night. It was the first time I'd seen it. So Zac Efron, Seth Rogen, Dave Franco, he was in it. The dude from Superbad, I'm forgetting his name. It was like it was a lot of people. I'm like, oh yeah, I recognize them. It was like a pretty good cast. It's definitely a movie in terms of if you just want like a dumb comedy, just like lowbrow, very sensitive, like very low, like sophomore frat boy humor. This ticks all the boxes. It is a typical Seth Rogen film where there's just a bunch of drinking and smoking and partying going on. Soon. There's going to be a lot of that. It's not like there's clever humor in it. I'll just say that. So just for a movie that you just throw on a Saturday night, you're having a couple drinks with your friends and do that. Yeah, great option, great time. Is it one of the better comedies in the world? No, but it was solid. It does not, I would say it was definitely a movie that like, it made a lot of references to the time it was made, which was around like 2014. So there's a lot of things that are mentioned where it's like, oh yeah, that was a thing. Okay. So watching it 8 years later, some of the jokes just didn't land as well, just because either new information of said jokes happened, or that was a different time where you definitely can't make those jokes. So that was a little bit of a thing, but yeah, it was solid. I don't know. It's not like the worst comedy. It's out of like raunchy comedies, this wasn't as bad as it could have been. I'll give it like a 5 out of 10, just because it's fine. Like, again, if you're just hanging out and want to just put on a movie on, get a couple good laughs in, it's a good option. But if you're expecting like a masterclass in comedy, this is not it.
Yeah, I'm like the anti-dick joke humor guy, so I really, that movie, and somehow I have watched this movie. I don't know. I assume my wife made us buy it in a bad attempt to watch a Zac Efron film. I burned those $4. I'm never getting it back. I do want to say though, this is to me the spiritual prequel to Iron Claw, the recent wrestling movie that Zac Efron was in, because this was the first role where I was like, okay, Zac Efron moved on from being like a teen heartthrob, and now he's like, I'm just going to be juicing, which, you know, respects, you do what you got to do. And he was like super built, but he wasn't like, his jaw hadn't expanded too much from all the testosterone he was taking. And then in Iron Claw, his head is a cinder block now. Now I know the word on the street is he like hurt his jaw or something, so it was a reconstructive surgery. I'm just assuming that was probably side effects from years and years of getting jacked. So shout out to you, Zac Efron, for turning it around from raunchy comedy jack guy to trying to be like a actual actor jacked guy. So yeah, that's my neighbor's take, I guess.
Yeah, when you were like, yeah, it was like a prequel to Iron Claw. I was like, those movies are two distinctly different
yeah,
movies.
I mean, they definitely
funny,
fill different genres.
One is depressing as all hell. I don't know how, and then you explain, I was like, okay, that makes more sense. Yes, the shedding the Disney label. Yeah, Zac Efron definitely did that in Neighbors. I would confidently say.
Yeah, I would confidently say so too.
So yeah, Neighbors. It was on Netflix again. It's fine. Like, it's not like it was the funniest thing I've ever seen, but it wasn't the worst thing I've seen. So now we are going to move on to our predictions. So we got Tuesday. So today, if you're listening to it, it's going to be home against the Lakers. Then they go on the road. Thursday, they play the New Orleans Pelicans, and then Saturday against the Atlanta Hawks. So, Adam, what are your predictions for the week?
I'm going to go 2-1. They've just struggled a lot on the road lately, so I think they'll beat the Lakers. I hope they'll beat the Pelicans. The Hawks just always give us trouble. I know they're injured and have lots of problems. It would be probably the most depressing loss to the Hawks in the regular season we've had in a while. But I think they'll lose one of either the Pelicans or the Hawks. So 2-1 for me.
It'll be the most depressing loss to the Hawks since game 2 of the season, yes. in which I was already like, I don't think Adrian Griffin's got it. So shout out to the Atlanta Hawks. I'm gonna go 2-1 as well. I think they'll beat the Hawks because I read an article on Peachtree Hoops about the 3 key questions, and it was essentially, what the F are we doing? So feel good about that. I think we will lose to the Pelicans, who have been good, even if they're missing Brandon Ingram. And I think they'll beat the Lakers. LeBron is questionable as of tonight, Monday night. I doubt he's going to play. So I think we'll go 2-1 with the loss to the Pelicans.
I'm going 3-0. I'm feeling good. You know, I think they beat the Lakers. They're going to make sure not to screw up like they did last time. And I can't really expect D'Angelo Russell to drop like 40 points again. I think the Pelicans, even though it'll definitely be tougher, I think they're going to do what they can to just either let Zion get all the points and no one else be effective, or find a way to have CJ McCollum shoot themselves out of it. And then the Hawks, that is a team that simply is not, vibes are bad. That's the best way I'll describe the Hawks. Vibes are bad. And when vibes are bad, the Bucks should take advantage of that. So that is what I'm going. I'm going 3-0. I'm feeling optimistic, but that has been our episode. Thank you very much for listening. You can make sure to like, subscribe, give us 5 stars, share it with your friends. Make sure to follow us at brewhoop.com, where we're going to have our weekly stuff, Monday morning media roundup, Tuesday tracker, question of the Antlers. Shout out Jim Paschke. Thank you very much for stopping by. Wednesday weekly round wrap up, and then we got the results of the Tuesday tracker. We'll also have game coverage, so make sure to do that. And yeah, we will talk to you all later.